Hello. Today I'm going to do a poem to a pair of Sarus Cranes. This poem has been requested by a student of mine. Let me tell you a little bit about the poet. So the poet is a Punjabi poet, a ManMohan Singh Mitwa. He worked in the Indian Army as a wing commander. And he fought the 1962, the 1965 and the 1975 wars for India. He was instrumental in promoting Indian culture among the SAARC nations. He's written 56 poems, and this poem is found in a compilation of poems in a book called The Village. Sarus Cranes are the tallest flying bird in the world. They are 5 feet tall. They have a grey plumage, that means their feathers are grey, and they have a long red neck and head with a bald patch on the head. These cranes are found in Southeast Asia, where India is located. And so it's found in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and Vietnam and even the north of Australia. The breeding season of these cranes is from June to September. And they are mainly found in wetlands. And when I say wetlands, I mean areas which are generally waterlogged, like a canal or a pond or even a marsh. Now, what is so peculiar that a poem needs to be made about a pair of Sarus Cranes? A Sarus Crane is a monogamous mate. That is, when they locate the mate that they want, they follow monogamy in their relationship. They do not mate with any other crane. So it's a monogamous relationship. When they make their nest, they make their nest in the wetlands. So they pile leaves and twigs and whatever. And their eggs take 31 to 34 days to hatch. The birds are active during the day and they sleep at night. Now, they are peculiar in they dance and they call out in the mating process. So there are nice videos. I've put a link of one of them in the description. If you're interested in seeing the dance that they do, watch the video. Today the Sarus Cranes, unfortunately, are threatened by loss of their habitat. And why is there a loss of habitat? There is a loss of habitat because of agricultural expansion, because of human development, and also because very often they are targeted during the hunting season. They are on the protected list because there are about 19,000 to 21,800 Sarus Cranes left. So it's up to us to look after nature. Let me start by reading the poem out to you and then going through the explanation and the figures of speech of To a Pair of Sarus Cranes by ManMohan Singh Mitwa. The male was shot as he necked to pull the reluctant sun out from the rim of horizon. She flew crying as he was picked by hands and jaws, and a proud neck was humbled to lie like a dirty linen in a coarse washing bag. She circled the sky in movements of grace, over his disgraceful end. The killers went away and she returned to the death scene with grief that inscribed its intensity in dots and pits, like the Morse code of birds' sorrow transmitted to the air. With her beak, she kissed a few feathers, picked the ones that the wind hadn't taken away, and sat to hatch the blood-stained feathers into a toddling chick. A wave of seas she had never seen came to her from far away and carried her to him. She went away beyond Hume's words, beyond the legends and fables of human love. This, in essence, is a little story about a pair of Sarus Cranes where the male is killed and the reaction and the feelings that the female Sarus Crane goes through at the death of her beloved mate. I am now going to do a line by line, stanza by stanza explanation of the poem. So the male was shot as he necked to pull the reluctant sun out from the rim of horizon. So what is the situation? It is early morning, the sun is reluctant to come out, to rise. And so the Sarus crane is flying, and the Sarus crane has a beautiful long neck. That beautiful long neck he uses to try to pull the sun out from beyond the horizon. And as he's doing that, or as it seems like he's doing that, the hunter aims and shoots the crane in the neck. She flew crying as he was picked up by hands and jaws, and a proud neck was humbled to lie like dirty linen in a coarse washing bag. And the female is a little behind, and she sees this situation and she starts calling out and crying. She observes the callous way in which the hunter picks up the bird by the neck and throws it like a dirty piece of cloth into a washing bag. So he's thrown into a bag because that's what the hunters want. They want the crane for its meat. She circled the sky in movements of grace over his disgraceful end. The killers went away and she returned to death scene with grief that inscribed its intensity in dots and pits like the Morse code of bird's sorrow transmitted to the air. So what does she do? The hunters have collected the crane and they have moved away. She circles over the area, flies over the area, and her movement of her wings is very, very, very graceful. She returned to the place where her mate was killed, and she sees the blood and she sees the result of the carelessness of the hunter. And what she sees causes her to experience a hard jolt to her heart that caused deep sadness, which we call grief. Grief is sadness that a person feels at the death of someone very close to them. And she has never experienced this, but she experiences for the very first time a hit almost to her heart because of the pain that she experiences at the knowledge of the death of her mate. Now what does she do? With her beak, she kissed a few feathers, picked the ones that the wind had not taken away, and sat to hatch the blood-stained feathers into a toddling chick. So what does this sad Sarus Crane do? She kisses those feathers with her beak, and those feathers are blood-stained feathers. She picks up those feathers which are lying in that area, which have not been blown away by the breeze and which have not been carried away by the hunters. And she collects them into her nest, and she sits on them like she is going to hatch an egg. And in sitting down in her place, she experiences something. Let's go to the last verse. A wave of the seas she had never seen came to her from far away and carried her to him. She went away beyond Hume's words, beyond the legends and fables of human love. And what happens to this female Sarus Crane is she sits on those feathers in deep distress, in deep sadness, in deep grief, and she doesn't eat, she doesn't look after herself, she feels all alone, and in doing that, she dies. She sacrifices herself for the sake of her lover. And in our last two lines we have, she went away beyond Hume's words. Now Hume is Alan Octavian Hume. He was a Britisher that you have studied in your history books. He was an ornithologist. Now what is an ornithologist? An ornithologist is an expert in birds. So Alan Octavian Hume did detailed studies of different birds in India. Like the words of Alan Octavian Hume, she went beyond the legends, that is the historical stories that are told which may not be completely authentic, or fable. A fable is a made-up story with animals as characters, and it is there to teach you a moral. So, she went away beyond Hume's words, beyond the legends and fables of human love. Here you can see how the Sarus Crane, the female Sarus Crane, and you know that cranes are monogamous. They have only one mate for their whole life. They're much like humans over there, because we humans also follow marriage, and we usually have a single mate during our lifetime. And so she, at the death of her lover, gives up on living, and in the process of that, with deep grief and sadness, gives up her own life. What does this poet want us to learn from this poem? The poet wants us to learn that we need to look after the birds and the animals and nature that God has given us. And sometimes we're so careless in our behavior, we don't take care of, or we don't even think of the repercussions of what we do, and we spoil nature, and in the process, we lose it. We ourselves are losers. There are two figures of speech that are clearly mentioned in the poem. The first figure of speech is a hyperbole. Now, what is a hyperbole? A hyperbole is a highly exaggerated statement. So we have a hyperbole where we have to pull the reluctant sun out from the rim of horizon. So it is that the Sarus Crane went to pluck out the sun. Now that is not possible for a crane to pluck out something as big as the sun, and so it is a hyperbole. The second figure of speech that is mentioned is in the second verse or the second stanza, and that is to be like dirty linen in a coarse washing bag. In this we have the figure of speech called a simile, where there are two different objects, the dead Sarus Crane and dirty linen. These are the two different objects. They have one common quality. One common quality is the dirtiness and the use of the word like for greater poetic effect. We have a second figure of speech, second example of a simile. In dots and pits like the Morse code of birds' sorrow. Here there are two different objects, the bird's sorrow and the Morse code, and the common quality is the pits or the feeling of deep sadness, and the word like is used for greater poetic effect. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned and understood what the poet ManMohan Singh is trying to tell us through this poem. I hope you've enjoyed learning it with me. This is Teacher Grandma, a teacher for 34 years, a grandmother of two pretty little girls, saying bye-bye. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.